Frank Marino with me. How's it going these days?
It's going great. It's going fun.
I see you're coming to Montreal, Canada.
Yeah, well, I live in Montreal, Canada.
Okay, so you're currently living there, and that's where you're going to be playing.
I live here.
Okay,
I've always
okay.
been in Montreal, a lot of people don't know that.
Okay, well, we've just
born here, grew up here, married here, had kids here, and made my living everywhere else. Well, I used to play here once a year, but in the early days we played a lot in Montreal, like talking in the early 70s, you know.
The long question everybody wants to know, when's the next album coming out?
Well, I'm working on a number of things right now. In December, I'm doing a sort of a documentary DVD of the band, so that's probably going to be the next album, as we put it. It's going to be a DVD instead of an album. But I'm working on 2 other records at the same time, so I'm working on a Mahogany Rush stuff, which goes back to the olden days, older style of music sort of redone, and I'm also working on a blues thing, New Orleans-style blues album.
Now, I'm sure this is taking a lot of your time, too, when you're doing this.
Oh, yes, takes all of my time.
Now, how long do you think it's going to take to make this, let's say, to finish it?
I should finish the DVD we're finishing the shooting by the 12th of December, and then it's just a question of mixing it and editing it, and I have no idea what would be the release, probably in the new year. And as for the other stuff, well, that's something that I'm going to wait and see what happens with the DVD, and I'll keep on working on the other stuff, slowly.
Another thing, too, I've seen that you did is remaster the old catalog.
Yeah, I did that, yeah.
How long did it take you to go into that? Was the masters quite good?
Yeah, well, they weren't. Well, I wouldn't say they were very good. They were okay, but my other job, other than playing guitar and doing what I do in my band, is I am an engineer. I do mastering and mixing and production, so I'm reasonably good at restoring older music, regardless of whose music it is. And so I had to do some restoration on some of that stuff because it was 30, 40 years old. And it came out pretty good, with the tools I have today. It turned out to be a pretty good remastering job.
What do you think of the fan base today, with the addition of the internet?
I think it's great. I'm a person, I'm different than a lot of the artists in that I'm not against the downloading of music. I like it. I think it should be allowed. And I don't think it hurts artists, and I don't agree that it takes money out of their pocket. It makes it harder to say that you're going to make a lot of money on an album, but I mean, I never really made money on albums. I more like did albums and went on the road. So for me, anything that helps people come to the concerts is good, and if people can download music and make them come to the concerts, that's better for me than selling them a record.
In 2011, are we going to have a lot more dates with Frank Marino?
I don't chase it, you know what I mean, Jason?
Okay.
I don't. If it comes, I go and I do it, but I'm not the type of guy anymore at my age to go chasing it and planning this and planning that. It's more like an art for me, an art form, and I do whatever makes everybody happy. It's more of a constant vacation.
Another thing too with your guitar tones, which you're known for legendary, quality.
Well, I build my own equipment. I build my own amplifiers. I build my own pedals. I build my own devices. So the tones that I have are pretty much unique to what I have. It's not like I could go into the store and buy them. And that's probably why I have the tone that I have, because I design it from the ground up and I use them that way.
Where did you decide to go and invent your own tones?
It started because when it was the early 70s, you couldn't really go into a music store and buy anything good. Now there's lots of stuff, but back then you were lucky if you found 3 or 4 things. And so I started having to learn how to modify the amps myself because, I couldn't afford to just hire guys to do it, and besides, a lot of guys didn't understand it. And so I started, learning slowly with some fuzz tones and some pedals what to do and how to make them sound better. And eventually I just got more and more aware, and I read more books, and I became better at it through experience and practice.
That's pioneering your own...
Well, they say necessity is the mother of invention. So I needed it. It was necessary, and so I invented a way to do it.
Well, that's great. And, the guitar tones still stand up today, what you did in, let's say, the 1978 live album.
Yeah. Most people are very surprised when they hear what I was actually using on those records. They thought I was using Stratocasters and Marshalls like everybody else, but I wasn't. I was using amps that that nobody would use. And they sounded pretty good for me. You know, they worked very well for the music that I do.
What do you do today? Do you still use this type of setup you've used in the 70s?
Yeah, it's changed. I mean, it's changed a lot since then, but it's, in my opinion, it's always getting better. So the last record I did, which was live, was called Real Live, and the tone on that is pretty much what I'm sounding like today. It's the equipment that I'm using now. And if someone hears Real Live, then they'll pretty much not be surprised when they come to a concert, because it really does sound like that.
This is a good question for you. What do you think of, let's say you take Boss and all these companies, Digitech, with their floor processors, with their preamps and that. What do you think of that today? Is it a...
Well, I don't like modeling.
Okay.
I know what they call modeling sounds. I think that when you use a modeling amp or you use a modeling pedal, when you plug it in at first and you hear it over the small speakers, you think, hey, yeah, that sounds really real, or it sounds like a Tweed, or it sounds like a Twin. But when you actually use it on a tape with real drums and real pianos and other things that are recorded, it starts to sound very, very tiny and very, very small. And I don't think they've gotten the modeling to the point where it can really sound like a mic'd amplifier that's moving a lot of air. You know, when you record with an amplifier, you're moving tons of air.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how you model it, you're still not moving any air. So you may be capturing the character of the sound, but you're not capturing the power of the sound.
In the future, do you think they'll achieve that?
I can't see how it would be totally achievable as long as they're not using power.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when amplifiers, one of the reasons that guitarists love tube amps so much, and they don't even know it, is because in a tube amp, the output stages are dealing with huge amounts of voltage, 500, 600, 700 volts, and that goes through transformers. Once you have that coming out of a speaker, even if you turn the amp down, you're still deriving your signal from a very, very large voltage swing, which means there's a lot of power behind it. And to give you an example, if you take a guy who had a great sound, like take Jimi Hendrix, for instance, who had a great sound coming off of his Marshall, if you take one of his records that was recorded on that Marshall, and then you take the recording of that, and then you play the recording through an amplifier, it won't sound as good as when it was actually recorded.
Mm-hmm.
It'll sound like a record being played through an amplifier.
Yeah.
It won't have the same power. So you'll have the character, you'll have the tone, but you won't have the power, and it won't sound real.
Very well said.
Yeah.
Did you ever experiment with pickups, different guitar pickups?
Oh, yes, very much.
I'm sure that would have been...
I'm doing... My whole thing now is to try to get the guitar to sound as clear as possible without noise, and to have gain and stuff, but without having noise. And I'm a really anti-noise guy. Like if I hear hiss, or I hear hum, or I hear distortion noise that I don't want in the tone, I'll rip something apart and try to find out why it's noisy and change it. I'm a freak for that. I really want my amp to sound very quiet without using any gates to make it fake quiet,
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens then is you get what we call a very, very big dynamic range, where the soft notes you play are very soft and the loud notes you play are very loud. And there's a big dynamics between the soft and the loud. When you over-compress something, there's no real dynamics anymore, and I think that's not very musical.
Do you think that microphones today are better than back in the 1970s? Like, let's say you take... No? Okay.
No, I think that the best mics that we can use today are still from the 60s and 70s. We still want old U87s and U47s and U67s and all the old mics that we used in the old days, like the Larry King mic, Mics like that are amazing. And when you can find one, be prepared to pay $5,000 or $6,000 for it.
Why can't they manufacture something like that today? Is it that they don't have the technology?
Well, they still do. They still do manufacture stuff like that today, but it costs a lot of money. But a lot of people are thinking now that they can buy for $800 or $900 a kind of a similar mic that's supposed to sound like a U87. The fact is, if you have a real U87 and you listen to that other mic that costs $800 or $900 back to back, that's when you notice a difference. It's very much like the modeling amp. The amount of research and parts that need to go into making a microphone proper, people don't realize just how much goes into why the mic sounds good. There's a grill on the microphone, and every hole in that grill is sized for a certain reason, and there's a whole bunch of other technical reasons that go into doing that, and if a company takes the time and effort to build them like that, then they do have to charge $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 for the microphone. This is not to say you can't get a good sound with cheaper mics. We often do. We use like a standard 57 on a guitar. We use a 421 on a tom-tom. And those are pretty standard, inexpensive mics. But they have their use for what you find out they work for. You know, the 57 will work pretty good on a Marshall cabinet. The 421 will work very good on a tom-tom on a set of drums. But that's all they work good for. You know, it's just by luck that's what they work on.
Back in the day, is it that they took more time to manufacture the mics, you know, less made and stuff like that?
Right, and they used better materials, and they used beryllium, and they used all kinds of very gold, and they did things to make them work properly. They didn't have to charge $1 million for them back then. Everybody was making one like that, you know. Germans really sort of did that, you know. They were making pretty good. They still are making pretty good stuff, you know. Germans make amazing. They make good cars. They make good mics. They make good software. Somehow Germany is still one of the countries that I believe takes pride in the quality of their work.
And also, you mentioned you're a producer and mastering engineer. What do you think of compression on records?
I think it's overused. I think that compression should be used when it's necessary. If you compress just because you want to get a sound of the compressor to do something, there are other ways to get that sound without compressing. But whenever you compress, what you do is you take away the dynamic range of whatever you're compressing. In other words, you make the loud parts lower and the low parts louder. So the difference between a low and a loud strike or a low and a loud note are much, much shorter. And if you think about music, any real musical instrument, whether it's a piano, stand-up bass, or even an acoustic guitar, they have very, very wide dynamic range. Just think about classical music. When you begin to take guitars and throw compression at them and drums and voices and the whole mix, what you end up with is a kind of a mishmash where a lot of sub-frequencies you wouldn't have heard in a quiet passage are all of a sudden as loud as the other ones. And the overall music suffers. I think it ends up sounding flat, distorted. You lose the space of where things are in the imagery, in the mix. So I use compression, but I try to use it as musically as possible. And anybody listening to this who looks at their audio on a waveform, I'm sure they've all seen the waveform that looks bumpy, and then they've seen the other guy's waveform that looks like a piece of chocolate bar on the screen. It's all the same size.
Yeah.
That's really not what you want to do when you're mastering.
When you take your old albums, let's say, were you happy with the mastering at the time they were coming out?
Yeah, I was. I was happy at the time because I knew less.
Okay.
But interestingly enough, I made an album in the 90s called Eye of the Storm. And I like to joke that that's the first album, that's my first album all over again, but with me knowing what to do. It's the album I should have made in 1970. Because when I did Eye of the Storm, I experimented with the idea that I was going to only use things that I had available to me in 1970. So I used guitars available in 70, mics, speakers, wiring. I didn't use anything on that record that wasn't available in 1970. And when you compare the difference between Eye of the Storm and Maxim, my first album, and you hear how much better Eye of the Storm is, it's not because of the gear. It can only be because of the experience. So it took me 40 years to get enough experience to use, I could have made Eye of the Storm in the 70s if I had known then what I knew later.
For your guitar collection, would you keep and would you get rid of these days? Like, do you still have, your old equipment, like for guitars and that?
Mostly I play my SGs.
Okay.
Mostly I play my Les Paul SGs, and when I don't play those, I have guys make me Les Paul SGs. I just really like SGs. They're easy guitars to play, but I do experiment with different pickups in them. And once in a while I'll play a Stratocaster, but I have a hard time playing Stratocasters standing up because of the way they hang on your shoulder. They hang on the wrong place on your body, so it makes me feel uncomfortable. But sitting down, I can play them a lot easier, But when you're on stage, you're standing up, so I play my Gibson SGs for that reason.
And to return back on your concert dates you're coming, I've seen also on your website that you're going to be filming some shows in December in the States.
Yeah, that's the DVD I was talking about in the 10th and 11th of December in Cleveland at the Agora. We're actually opening up the Friday night for the setup. We're letting the public come to that. and on the Saturday we're filming all day from noon till midnight. We're probably going to do the show 3 or 4 times, and different shows each time, just to have enough material to put together for a DVD.
With live audience 3 times?
Oh yeah. All day. They'll be there all day.
You'll not get tired?
Oh, I'll get very tired. But listen, I'm only going to do this once.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there'll be time to be tired the next day.
Yeah, I mean, you're making a DVD. Let's just think of it like that.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Well, Jason, it's been a pleasure talking to you, too.
Frank, wish you luck with this DVD. I can't wait to see the final product. Congrats on the great remasterings of your albums.
Thank you very, very much. And if anybody needs mastering, call me up. That's what I do.
Well, I just discovered that you're full of knowledge.
Okay, Jason.
All right, have a good night, Frank.
We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.